listening to The Cooler Ring, a podcast made for manufacturing marketers. Here are Carmen Perry and Jeff White.
Welcome to The Cooler Ring, a podcast for manufacturing marketers brought to you by Cooler Partners. My name is Jeff White. Joining me today is Carmen Perry. Carmen, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Look, this is one of the last episodes we're going to record within 2023. I think it'll probably be released in the new year. But, it just has that end-of-year feel, Jeff.
Yes, it does. Along with all of the audio hiccups you expect as you're just kind of trying to record some episodes before going to the holidays.
Yeah, it's like it's not just the host, but also the equipment that has apparently been on the bourbon and eggnogs maybe a bit too much or something.
I think it's because we lent our patch cords to the DJ for the Kula Christmas party, and they're still wishing they were back doing that instead of this.
Exactly. The highest and best use for the patch cord.
Yeah, exactly right. So they wish they were on the road for sure. So
I'm excited for today's chat. I think I guess there's been and this has been pervasive, kind of throughout my career. It feels like it keeps kind of coming back, this notion of getting closer to the customer and taking that, how do you deliver customer experiences in new ways? And that's why I'm just so excited for today's guest. I think they're doing some great things that are bringing their brand closer to the customer, and I think it's something that a lot of manufacturers can listen to and learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about it too. So let's get right into it. So joining us today is Nick Baranowski. Nick is the marketing director at Keystone Technologies. Welcome to the Cooler Ring, Nick.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here. A little jealous. You guys have to send me some of that eggnog. Apparently, I like the bourbon taste in that, so you have to send that down. Happy to be here.
Look, I've got to tell you, as a little bit of a holiday note, being up here on the east coast of Canada, it's a bit of a rum country here, right? All the rum runners from back in the day bringing legal rum into Atlantic Canada, so it's a bit of a nostalgic thing, and therefore you're kind of brought up to drink your eggnog with rum. But the second you switch to the bourbon, you realize that you folks down in the States, you've got something figured out there. It beats rum hands down in the eggnog.
I'm a little partial to it, but that's okay. I'll let you guys enjoy it. Either way is good with me. So.
All right, sir. Well, look, Nick, it's great to be chatting. Maybe let's start by giving our listeners a bit of an overview of Keystone and how you ended up there.
Yeah, great. Keystone was founded in 1945. We're a third-generation privately held company. We are a lighting manufacturer. We service commercial and residential lighting goods into mostly the electrical distribution market, but the overall construction space. Really great story. I'll give you the short version. 3 generations ago, somebody came back from World War II. Founder was looking for work to do, went to a hardware store and said, "What are you guys having trouble with? What's hard for you?" And they said, "Hey, there's this thing called a fluorescent ballast. This new thing, fluorescent lighting's out, and we can't find them." And took off from there. He started his own little shop at his house, started to manufacture them. His cousin was an engineer, so they started to build them themselves. Fast forward, next generation takes over, LED expansion happens. Third generation comes into play. We start expanding even more. And now we're providing lighting solutions all across the United States to distribution contractors and specifiers across the United States.
That's a really cool story. Yeah. And Nick, it's a tough space. The people that you're trying to sell to, that you're trying to get in front of, man, there's an awful lot of people that want their attention, and they don't seem to be all that keen to give it. That really must, be at the heart of why you're doing what you're doing from a mobile customer experience perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of manufacturers like us, we consider ourselves like a B2B to B2C, right? So by the time it's in a final one, there's a few legs there. And being one manufacturer, obviously there's plenty of other lighting manufacturers in the market too, vying. And then to your point, you try to go to the person you're trying to sell into their branch to get to the next level of the customer and even influence them. And they have wire customers and lighting customers and plumbing customers. And you're one of maybe 300 or some vendors that they have to have on their shelves for their customers. So getting their attention is very hard. You have to have purpose, you have to have reason, and most importantly, you have to have timing. And their needs vary. So trying to find that perfect space is what led us to the creation of something we're going to talk today about where I'm sitting today in Keystone Live and Keystone Live on Tour, our kind of mobile version of where I am today.
So tell us a bit about the kind of the impetus for the creation of this space and what you're doing with it.
So I have to rewind back. I came here a little over 3 years ago in the middle of this great thing called the COVID pandemic. If you guys remember what that was, right now, you guys talked about end of year, that's kind of spiking in different units again. And what we found in our industry was really this unprecedented closure of doors, where our business is very much kind of a people business, a partnership business, and that kind of building of relationships is key. And our organization found ourselves where they said, you can't come in just because, that's what the government was requiring in different areas. And we said, well, how can we get to customers, especially in a landscape where a lot of people like to touch and feel a product, right? That's what has them understand what it actually is. So a lot of this kind of, hey, see my sample, kind of door-to-door sales became a barrier. And we quickly said, well, how can we get around that? What can we do? And we came up with two solutions. One is we actually build out an entire showroom inside, which I'm in right now. And what you can't see, but what's in front of me right now is we kind of took a hospital type setup of a motorized power unit with video and audio gear and a gimbal with a remote phone and allowed us to, in essence, build out our space with every product we would want to take to a customer that allows us to come and grab it and walk up close to any product that we service and have them ask questions to get as close as we could to get that hands-on feel without actually being able to put something in front of them. But then we found that still created some barriers. So we ended up building out 5 mobile units. So what's behind me kind of packed into a unit that we can drive around and do. And our barrier there was, well, if we can't come inside, but we're allowed to be outside, we can also bring our products to where you are in an environment that allows customers to kind of see and feel things at the same time. And boy, is that growth. We started with 1 unit, we're up to 5. And now even post-pandemic, it's proven to be a true game changer. And we've seen a lot of other companies start to do that same type of mobile experience to try to meet the customers where they are.
So are we talking about are we like a Sprinter vans type of setup? Is it a big 18-wheeler? What is this the mobile experience contained in?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, something that we had a lot of debate about, right? There's pros and cons, and there's really big budgets for 18-wheelers. Sprinter vans sometimes get a little too small. We have a really big portfolio. So what we actually have are tow-behind trucks, and we have about we have 16-foot units and 20-foot units. They're in essence a huge stand-in trailer that's been converted into a trade show unit that tows behind a unit, so you can pull up into a facility like a K through 12 high school, you can pull up into a hospital, or you can pull up in front of a distributor location who may be stocking a plethora of products and is having a lot of contractors and customers come through and all experience the product. So that mobility and kind of size was really something that we had to pay attention to, because the first thing was saying, where does it need to be, right? Because sometimes those 18-wheelers are really cool and they're exciting, but all of a sudden, like, hey, you can't get around the corner to show the guy in the city anything, so that doesn't really become quite viable at that point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure that the percentage kind of varies a bit, but as you're bringing these kind of mobile showrooms to the customer, what's the rough split from, targeting it at distributors and kind of trying to catch a lot of contractor level folks at the distributor versus going to them directly, maybe on a job site or what have you, versus the educational component that you mentioned. I'm just kind of curious about those different uses and kind of how it breaks down.
Yeah, if you had to, put that in a total kind of view, I would say, at a core big customer location where multiple people would be coming through, it's probably around 50% of the traffic that we have. Then I would say we have probably about 20% of that is direct at a specific customer location where maybe there's a whole team or it's a contractor and it's, hey, bring it to my whole team before they leave for the day. You can go there. We have another about 15% where it actually travels to regional trade shows. So we also bring it into kind of shows that maybe don't require the big budget of building an entire booth and a setup, but you don't really just want a table set up as well. Allows us to kind of enhance that experience a little bit. And then the rest of it's kind of just general training where maybe ad hoc locations.
That's a nice little hack on the trade show too. It gives you some presence out in the parking lot rather than just having to wait for them to get into the show itself. In the right situation, that could work pretty well.
I actually even brought it into shows and used it as the booth.
Oh, nice.
They're 8 foot tall. They have a door that drops down with 2 entry points. Again, some of the Sprinter vans, the challenge there was, hey, do you want to use it for a trade show? Oh yeah, sure. Let me get a line and have people walk into a crowded box, stand around with people, and then walk out of a crowd. It didn't really work, so it kind of gave that nice opportunity there as well. Not to knock the smaller unit, we are looking at adding another. So we do have some territories that are very dense and urban, and we've gotten some feedback that the size of what we have actually makes it a little hard to get into those niche locations. So we are looking for like a compact version as well for more of those dense urban environments.
And how many kind of geographical areas are you covering with these 5 units that you have now? Like how far is that spreading you out?
Coast to coast. So we have 5 units in tour, 365 throughout the year. Obviously, seasonality comes into effect. Not too many people want to be outside walking through a unit if it's 2 feet of snow on the ground. But we kind of operate all the way around the continuous U.S. Coast to coast throughout the year.
Seems to me like this is really just an extension of that, the factory tour and those kind of really high touch experiences, which are typically delivered either to customers that you're trying to deepen a relationship with and maybe gain more share of wallet, or prospects that are in those very late stages of a buying process. But it would seem to me that as we make this a more mobile experience, it would allow us to get in front of prospects at an earlier stage in the cycle. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I would say petting the customer, that's absolutely true. And I think the good thing of what we've built is, we didn't launch with just one, right? I think our purpose when we looked at what we were going to do is we said, hey, we have our corporate office. We enhanced that tour experience. We need a virtual experience like this for maybe a very short time window or maybe people who don't have the opportunity to travel. And then we need another unit where we can go to them. So I think what we've found is that those mobile units and having all 3 of those experiences allows us to do exactly what you said, right? It allows us to get in front of the early thought of a purchase person when they're in that kind of like evaluation stage. We can say, hey, listen, we can do a quick 30-minute thing. We're not going to fly you all the way out here to do this big hoopla tour. Let us give you a taste, right? And then we can do that virtual or we can bring it to you. Then you get a little bit more interested. Then you can really come in and get that full sample. So I think to your point, the other element that it helps you do is really kind of qualify that lead a little bit more, right? To come and see our kind of corporate facility is a great experience. Typically a home run. Typically a little hesitant to bring a whole team out here and rather expensive too if you want to kind of cover some of those costs or kind of do entertainment while you're here. So trying that evaluation of is that person really qualified or at the point that they really need that deep dive or is that happening too early kind of in that buyer's journey has also given us some good ability to kind of tease those elements out.
Have you found, is anybody calling you up asking for you to send the mobile unit?
Yeah, so something we're trying to solve right now is, we launched and thought like, hey, this is great. You can give it to your sales team and they can make their appointments and go. And now all of a sudden you get your sales team going. Everybody wants it. The sales guy wants it. All the customers who have heard about it want it. And, they want it next week. They want it here. So now we're actually kind of more into scheduling. We need to enhance our ability to kind of schedule and plan out and architect kind of where will it be when. It started very opportunistic and it's such in high demand now that we kind of have to find ways to expand them as well as kind of do a better operational execution throughout the states.
Man, the joy of overnight success, eh?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great problem to have to try to solve, I think. It's something that I think a lot of marketers maybe skip past or they don't think about a lot in this space. But I think part of what we do as marketers when we're doing our job most effectively in the manufacturing space is giving salespeople both something to talk about, the confidence to talk about it, the excuse to talk about it. Like, they're inherently pretty good at building relationships and having conversations, and sometimes they just need an excuse to do so. And it sounds as though, when I hear about the salespeople are clamoring to want these mobile units in their region or at their customer locations, that's just basically what they're telling you is they found it a great thing to talk about.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I really view marketing as a service, right? You're a service to either your internal customers, your sales folks, or you're a service to their customer. And I view marketing as your whole goal is identify what the customer wants to talk about, how they want to talk about it, and what they want to see, right? And that perfect mix of kind of solving that, right? We think about it with SEO evaluations of online, right? It's got to be the right word. You want to get them to the right place as quick as possible. I think this is no different. If your customers want to touch and feel something, how do you allow them to do an experience? We have a lot of other programs in our company too. We do a lot of free samples. We'll ship a sample to somebody, but there's that level then where you talk about that buyer journey where it's, hey, I saw it, but now I want to talk about it. So putting those two together is kind of when you want to execute that type of unit. And I think salespeople screaming for it is that it's them saying, you've given me something that allows me to have the right conversations with different customers at the same time. Give it to me, right? And then, okay, well, now let me make sure that you're giving it to the right customer at the right time, and let me help you vet some of that out. Becomes the next challenge.
Every salesperson is going to get a mobile showroom, Jeff. That's what's going to happen.
That's how it works. Yeah, for Christmas, you get one and you get one. But I do think, though, there's this wonderful notion of kind of getting back to the physical with this. It feels even better than like, hey, we've gone back to trade shows. It's more like, no, we've gone back on our own terms, and we're doing this in a way that really enables us to tell the message we want to tell in the way that we want to tell it, while showcasing the products right in front of people. Have you digitally enabled this at the same time from a marketing and sales perspective?
Yeah, I would say that's been a debate that we are still ongoing and having. I think what you've seen as a trend, especially as some software becomes an easier entry point, is kind of, hey, why don't you just take your whole showroom? Why don't you map it out with some really great software and have somebody be able to tap it and get your spec sheet and kind of do it themselves, right? We're exploring that as a potential, but I think what we found right now is that part of the benefit here is the live engagement, right? It's the interactive nature that happens outside of digitization. So if you're sitting here and you say, well, I have a question on that, but until we get to the point where you can have that kind of live engagement while somebody's virtually doing it themselves, we still think this kind of human touch point is an important part to have, but definitely evaluating maybe how that would be done or doing that as kind of a subset in that kind of buyer's journey to figure out maybe somebody needs a little something more. So that's still in the roadmap for us.
I'd be interested to know, because you say you've built 5 of them now, correct?
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure that by the time the 3rd one rolled around, or 4th, you would learn some lessons, things that you wish you had done in the 1st one or the 2nd one. I'm curious what those lessons are.
Sure.
Top things we wish we would have done the first time.
My goodness, hold on. I'll get out that list this long. So I have some experience in telecom, a lot of kind of experiential marketing, mobile marketing as well. But I think when it came into this kind of manufacturing space, big kind of hiccups that we learned along the way. One is training for the sales team in operations, right? I think there's some people that say like, hey, I've driven a car or I've towed a camper before, and all of a sudden you're saying like, hey, well now you're going to set up this whole mobile experience yourself. A lot of the things that we found us sprinting on in the first year or so of introduction is like, man, how do we make that easier for a guy who maybe has never done some type of mobile marketing before, right? They're now responsible for plugging in, setting up, putting out the materials. Where do the materials go, right? Like we thought we had everything perfectly packaged, but I think a lot is just kind of training, getting from your people, what would you do if you just got this, right? And then we're like, oh, well, you don't know how to set up a tent. You don't know how to set up some of these things. So some things that just seemed really basic, where not that they can't set up a tent, right? But from a marketing side, to get the branding exactly right, to get the layout right, I think we needed a lot better documentation in that. And then the second was just operations. We thought we could kind of say, hey, we could do this and leave it a little loose. We really found that you need somebody dedicated to go and kind of just manage operationally where it's going, who's getting it next, what's the giveaway, what's the lead capture from it. We had that very separated at first with kind of the different people who would be in charge of that role, if you would. And what we found is that creates a lot more confusion of, well, who's doing this and where's that happening? So I'd say, don't underestimate the importance of a dedicated resource just for managing it. Sometimes like, is that all they're going to do all day? But man, the amount of things in there. And then the third was we talked about size evaluation. We found the right size, right, for what we needed from a tour experience. And then we quickly found out, well, you got so big that you now need to be a DOT certified vehicle, and that comes with a lot of additional elements and legalities around it too. So, that kind of like run then walk. Sometimes I would say, make sure your operational plan's there, make sure you have appropriate resourcing for it, and make sure you have training pre-lined up before you kind of get it into the market. Our tagline here at Keystone is light made easy, but we try to carry that through everything that we do. And I think that we found out that we had a lot of improvements to make everything easy for our internal customers as well as our external customers.
Sounds like it's a good idea for somebody heading down this path to be eyes wide open that first year there are going to be some kinks, and just lean into them and understand that they're coming versus be surprised.
Yeah. And don't freak out, right? Like your hair's on not fire, the world's burning, we can't do it anymore. So there's a challenge. You bump into them in every kind of new rollout that you do. So, and I would say, there's a lot of organizations out there that kind of do this. You can go to a third-party organization and say, hey, will you run my mobile tour? I think a company has to look really hard at kind of the cost and what they want to execute. And do you want to lean on kind of a third-party resource to do that? We found that we wanted to kind of test a bunch of areas and test different setups and displays. And we had a lot of ability to do that internally with rapid iteration, a lot better than we did at cost than immediately going out to kind of a third party and saying, hey, we want to do it, you build it, you run it, and go. So kind of key decision I think you have to make early on.
And I have to think too, you're nothing like that is going to survive contact with the enemy the first couple of times. So, you're going to have those learnings that if you then have to go back to somebody and have it rebuilt or reconfigured, that just makes it very, very difficult to justify and want to do, probably.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely hidden under that, hey, what's your resource and operation plan? Here just this past year, we've come out with 320 new products. So the evaluation of the unit, when can it get changed out, when it's upgraded with your latest good, how is that happening, who's actually doing the installation, where it's going. A lot of those elements are kind of that back-end learning lesson where it's like, hey, we got it, go. Well, a year later, a year and a half later, hopefully you guys have something new to talk about, right? You want to go back, see another customer. What is that upgrade process? We actually, to your point, just had a conversation yesterday about, we never really sat down and evaluated the end of life cycle. And what does that look for? How long do we expect a particular unit to last, right? It's driving around the continuous US. Is that a 5-year life expectancy plan where we should be budgeting for that early on? Is definitely something that we're kind of learning from as well.
How have you found this kind of compares to what you see the competition doing? And what has been the customer response?
Yeah, I would like to say copycat is the best part of flattery. I would say when we first launched both of these units, I would say I had not seen really our competition doing anything close to it. I think the closest thing I found is a lot of manufacturing places having training centers that came in or doing webinars. And I think this was like that in-between ground that really hadn't been done before. Year one, we got a lot of notoriety, a lot of kind of press came out of it as well, a lot of earned media from people seeing it and saying it was great. Our customers, our competitors rapidly evolved, and I would say now we see probably 30 to 40% of our core competitors doing something similar and trying to get it in. and I would say at different scales. Some take different approaches of an 18-wheeler versus sprinter van, like you said. So I think we take that as, hey, it has to work, because what we actually found is our customers were going to other vendors and saying, Keystone came by and did this, and man, our customers loved it. Do you guys have something like that? And they didn't at the time. So I think the customer demand for it kind of introduced a new segment, at least in our space, where I see a lot of our competitors kind of quickly trying to ramp up to do something similar. And for us, that now pushes us of what's the next thing, right? How do you continue to enhance the experience, which we began doing some work on, just improving engagements, maybe improving interactions. And I'd like to say we have the head start, so we have some of the learnings, and as long as we're kind of putting them back into the machine to churn out to re-enhance that experiential experience, that we'll stay in the lead there. So we just have to keep improving, right? You can't get stagnant and say, hey, it worked, just run it for 7 years, it's going to keep working. Every 6 months or so, we look at it and say, what do we have to change to make it better?
I think that's important learning too, because there's an awful lot of folks would see competitors coming on board and doing something similar and think, oh, wow, they're catching up. They only catch up if you stand still. If you keep evolving that experience, then those learnings that you get along the way, they're going to find it awfully hard to catch up.
Yeah, I will say one thing I personally struggle with, but I think has helped me in this process, is I like to have all my things lined up, right? Well, hey, we don't want to introduce that experience until we can get the leads in. We can't get the leads in until we have it connected to our CRM system. We can't connect it to our CRM system until we have an automation plan for re-engagement afterwards. And I found that these type of experiences have so many different touch points and engagements. You really have to start with the plan to react, right? So it sounds a little different than just do something and then react and figure out what to do. But if you start knowing, I'm going to learn, I have to react fast, we have to iterate, we have to be flexible, I think that's been our biggest key to success, right? Start small with the one, get the learning, introduce 2 or 3, get the learning, grow, now figure out how to connect systems. Because at first I would have said we probably would have done a lot of work that wasn't right, because which customers were engaging weren't really that funnel input that we thought at first, right? At first it was a lot of kind of purchaser decisions, not their customer engagements. Now that we've expanded, we have new customers coming, so new touch points, new automations, a lot of other things that we have to evaluate now. But start small and use it as like Lego blocks, as opposed to saying, I know exactly what that journey is meant to be, so make it happen. I think you'll find a lot better success that way as well.
It's almost taking a page out of the SaaS song sheet a little bit, and just, the idea of kind of release frequently and iterate and take feedback rather than wait until you have the perfect app or what have you. It's a bit of that sort of thinking that you're employing there.
Yeah, and I think, especially at least for me, when it gets into customer experience, you kind of drop some of the learnings that you have as a core marketer, right? Most marketers, when we think about it, we say, hey, do you want to do some ads? Well, yeah, I'm not throwing my whole budget. I'm going to do a test group. Did it perform? Did it not perform? And then you get into mobile experience, you might go like, oh, this is a big investment, so we have to get it perfect, right? So you still need that, hey, we're going to learn from it, we're going to test, and we're going to grow. Just maybe a little bit more upfront cost that you have to think through when that happens.
You got me thinking of something there earlier, and I don't know if there's a there or not, but I'm going to ask anyway to see if there is. It would seem that maybe the earliest people that will experience something like this when you create it are probably those customers that like you the most. I mean, in some way, they're the customers that the salespeople will be most excited to show them the new toy or what have you, right? And I'm kind of just rattling around in my mind this notion of maybe the customers that you're learning from in the early part of the experience aren't the same type of customer that you're actually trying to reach on the prospect stage. You know what I mean? Like, you have to learn from those early things, but also recognize that the person you're talking to might be a different person. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I would say that I think we found that exact thing. Who is the customer that's engaging with you at what point, and kind of going through and saying, that's not exactly who I thought it was. Hey, there's a new influencer that we didn't really know about. This guy followed up with us with questions, and then the customer who we thought made all the decision called us the day later. I think we found more about where the influencer in the life cycle was, a lot more than we thought we would have.
I guess we've already kind of covered, this idea that you're constantly thinking of the next thing and how are you going to integrate new products, and that is a massive number of new products to launch and also promote via a mobile offering, I have to say. But so you're clearly thinking down the road with this. But what are you most excited about for 2024?
I'm really excited for that kind of enhanced engagement, right? What are we doing to make it even more memorable for our customer's customer? Because I think that's, getting in front of your customer is great. Getting in front of your customer's customer creates the pull through. And I think that's the next part that we're really focused on is how do we take our tool and now extend our tool from our sales team to our customer sales team. We've started to find a lot of success for that. That requires, different kind of engagement a little bit, kind of different experience of why do they want to come and see it, right? Sometimes there needs to be some type of prize or engagement opportunity in there, or even just communication around it. I'm really excited to see that as it comes. And you did just mention one part that's an important consideration of maybe any marketer doing this. That's sales alignment. We have roughly 7,000 SKUs inside of our system. Small for some manufacturing companies that get into the hundreds of thousands. But you imagine going into your sales team saying, hey, I'm going to create a mobile sales unit for you that has everything in it. What's everything, right? And we started, when I first came, even in our trade shows, some of our key kind of sales influencers were, we need the physical version of everything displayed. Doesn't matter if it looks exactly the same, if it's a little bit different here or a little bit different there. We have to show everything or else the customer won't understand. So getting that kind of core product solution set down into what you could actually contain in that mobile experience probably took us about 2.5 months of very deep engagement continuously with our different sales teams, because we also operate in 4 different channels. So trying to find that collaboration and negotiation between all the different groups to say, hey, you need to give and take a little bit so we can create this great experience. It was a big lift, but worth a lot of thought to make sure you have the right thing in there early. That was probably the biggest plan.
I think that's some great advice, Nick, for the listeners that are looking to maybe take this idea and run with it. I'll be curious to hear those from those who do, because I think there's a really big there, and I'm just incredibly impressed with what you've been able to create. Thanks so much for joining us on the Cooler Ring today, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I hope that some of the stuff we talked about maybe helps out other marketers there looking at kind of getting a new experience for their customers. And had fun talking with you guys. Ready to dip into some eggnog.
Exactly. It's been a pleasure. And we'll be sure to link up some videos or some stills of your space. And so for folks listening, please check it out on the main Cooler Ring site, and we'll get that to you. I think it'll be interesting for people to check out. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's coolapartners.com. Thanks so much, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a great end of the year and enjoy the kickoff to next year.
Cheers, Nate.
Thanks for listening to The Cooler Ring with Carmen Perry and Jeff White. Don't miss a single manufacturing marketing insight. Subscribe now at coolapartners.com/thecoolerring. That's KULApartners.com/thecoolerring.